Welcome back to Chapter by Chapter Classics, the short-form classic literature podcast where each episode walks you through a few chapters of a great book. Previously in Dracula, Van Helsing proved that Lucy had become one of the undead, and Arthur, Seward, Quincey, and Van Helsing helped release her from Dracula's influence. In this episode, we're covering chapters 17 through 20, where Mina organizes the group's evidence, Jonathan's Transylvania journal becomes essential, and the characters begin hunting Dracula in London.
So you sent over the notes on chapters 17 through 20 of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and looking through this material, there is a massive misconception that I feel like we need to clear up right out of the gate.
Oh, absolutely. I think I know exactly which one you mean.
Right. Because whenever you think of this story, your default image is just pure Gothic horror. You know, you picture isolated castles, heavy fog, helpless victims running through the woods at midnight.
Yeah, and an enemy that is terrifying specifically because it defies all reason. You kind of expect superstition to just rule the day.
Exactly. The traditional playbook for this genre relies almost entirely on keeping the characters and, frankly, the audience completely in the dark.
Right. The monster operates in the shadows, and the humans are just reacting. And usually reacting pretty poorly, to be honest. They're up against a supernatural force they can't possibly comprehend.
But looking at the sources you provided for this specific chunk of the book, it's like that entire playbook is just thrown out the window. Right here, basically in the middle of the narrative, the story abruptly shifts.
It really does. It's a huge pivot.
Yeah. We are no longer reading a spooky ghost story. We are suddenly looking at this gritty, data-driven, true crime procedural. And our mission for today's deep dive is to unpack this incredible pivot.
I love that framing. Because it really is a procedural now.
It is. We're going to explore how this group of scattered, deeply traumatized victims finally figures out how to fight back. And the wild part is they don't do it with pitchforks and torches. They do it with cutting-edge 19th century technology, strict data management, and just actual shoe leather detective work.
Yeah, the methodology is the actual weapon here. Because up until chapter 17, Dracula's primary advantage hasn't really been his fangs or his physical strength.
No,
his greatest weapon has always been isolation. Think about the victims so far. I mean, Jonathan Harker was physically trapped in Transylvania, completely unable to send letters out.
Right. He was totally cut off.
And then Lucy was hunted in Whitby in London, but the people trying to save her were constantly keeping secrets from each other, mostly to protect one another's feelings.
Which was so frustrating to read.
Exactly. Dracula thrives when his prey cannot communicate. So to defeat him, the heroes first have to actually understand him, and that requires pooling their knowledge.
And enter Mina Harker. This is the exact moment where the story shifts from, individual panic into organized resistance.
This is my favorite part.
Same. Mina arrives at Dr. Seward's asylum, and up to this point, Dr. Seward has just been recording his diary on a phonograph. He is literally carving his voice into wax cylinders because he has absolutely no one to talk to about the horrors he's witnessing.
It's such a lonely image, just a guy talking into a machine.
It really is. And Mina takes one look at this fragmented, chaotic mess of information, and she just gets right to work. I mean, think about how you tackle an overwhelming project at your job today. You break it down into data points.
Right, you organize it.
Exactly. Mina gathers Jonathan's shorthand journal from the castle. She takes Lucy's tragic letters, newspaper clippings about that mysterious ghost ship, and Seward's audio recordings, and she just sits down at a typewriter.
And we really need to understand the technological context of the 1890s to grasp what Mina is accomplishing here.
Oh, for sure.
Because the phonograph was a relatively new, almost unsettling invention at the time. I mean, capturing a disembodied voice on a wax cylinder felt like actual magic to a lot of people.
Wow. Yeah. I guess I didn't think about how creepy that must have seemed.
Right. And then you have shorthand, which was essentially a personal encryption system for rapid data entry. And the typewriter was the ultimate symbol of the industrialization of information.
That's a great way to put it.
So Mina is taking these highly subjective, deeply emotional mediums like personal diaries and private audio confessions, and she's translating them into objective uniform text. She types them out in triplicate and organizes everything chronologically.
She is essentially building an 1897 version of a murder board.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
You know those massive cork boards in true crime documentaries with the red string connecting all the push pins? That's Mina. She is cross-referencing train schedules, shipping manifests, diary entries. She is the intellectual engine of this entire operation.
And the psychological impact of her work is, I would argue, just as important as the tactical advantage it gives them.
Oh, so?
Well, before Mina collates this data, every single character genuinely thinks they are losing their mind.
Oh, that's true. Jonathan thinks he had brain fever.
Right. Jonathan believes his memories of the vampire castle are just a symptom of an illness. And Dr. Seward suspects his encounters with the undead Lucy were some sort of, collective hallucination.
Because it's just too crazy to be real.
Exactly. But when Mina puts all the evidence on a single timeline, she proves the threat is real. She validates their trauma. By replacing isolated superstition with organized data, she essentially gives them their sanity back.
Wow. And once that timeline is established and they finally have their sanity back, they can spot the patterns. The data allows them to profile the predator.
Yes, and that brings us to Van Helsing.
Right. Professor Van Helsing takes this newly collated evidence, combines it with his own research into ancient folklore, and calls a literal council of war. He briefs the team on the rules of the vampire.
And the concept of rules is what separates a modern procedural from a classic fairy tale.
I completely agree.
Because a monster without limits is just a force of nature, right? You cannot fight a hurricane.
Yeah.
But a monster with specific exploitable rules, that becomes a tactical puzzle.
So what are the rules he lays out? Because he starts with the powers, right?
Yeah, Van Helsing outlines the terrifying stuff first. Dracula has the physical strength of 20 men. He can shapeshift into a bat, a wolf, or even elemental mist.
Which is just wild.
It is, and he commands what Van Helsing calls the meaner creatures. So rats, owls, foxes. Plus he casts no shadow and reflects no image in a mirror.
Honestly, the powers sound completely insurmountable, but then the briefing shifts to the weaknesses, and the contrast is kind of bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
Here is this immortal warlord who commands the weather, but he is entirely repelled by a clove of garlic. He is deterred by a crucifix and completely blocked by the sacred host.
And we should probably clarify what that is for the listener.
Good point. The sacred host is a consecrated communion wafer, which in Catholic theology represents the actual physical body of Christ. The idea is that the vampire, being a creature of anti-life and corruption, physically cannot endure the presence of ultimate purity.
Right. And beyond those spiritual blocks, Van Helsing also details some strict temporal limitations. Dracula's shape-shifting abilities are severely restricted.
Oh, right. The clock thing.
Yeah. Unless he is physically inside his own lair, he can only change his form at exact noon, sunrise, or sunset. He's bound to the mechanical ticking of the clock just as much as he is bound to the spiritual power of the crucifix.
But the limitation that changes everything, though, the real game changer, is his sleep schedule. Dracula has to rest in boxes of sacred earth from his homeland in Transylvania.
This is such a brilliant concept from Stoker.
It really is. Just consider the implications of that for a second. He can turn into mist and slip through a tiny keyhole, but at the end of the day, he is heavily reliant on a wooden box filled with specific dirt.
It acts as a geographical leash.
Yes. He cannot travel further than he can return before sunrise. It operates almost exactly like a smartphone and a charging cable.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Think about it. You can have the most advanced, powerful piece of technology in your pocket, capable of accessing the sum total of human knowledge. But if you wander too far from a wall outlet and you do not have that specific cable, your phone dies. It just becomes a useless brick. Dracula is basically a supernatural supercomputer, but the box of earth is his wall outlet.
That framing perfectly explains the group's sudden change in strategy. They suddenly realize they do not need to win a physical fistfight with a demon that has the strength of 20 men.
Which is good, because they would definitely lose that fight.
Oh, 100%. Instead, they need to disrupt his logistics network. The mission shifts from hunting a monster to identifying and sterilizing his sanctuaries.
Cut off the power supply.
Exactly. If they destroy the earth boxes, he's left stranded, he won't be able to recharge, and he'll ultimately be vulnerable to a permanent death.
And knowing he requires these specific dirt boxes forces their hand immediately, because they have a known vampire property right next door.
Carfax.
Right. Jonathan Harker originally traveled to Transylvania to facilitate Dracula's purchase of the Carfax estate, which is this sprawling, ruined property right on the border of Dr. Seward's asylum. So, armed with their new rules of engagement, the newly formed team executes a tactical raid on the Carfax chapel.
And Stoker's description of this breach is just saturated with sensory details that really emphasize the physical reality of the threat. The characters aren't just stepping into a spooky, dimly lit room.
No, it's visceral.
It's sickening.
Oh.
The air inside the old chapel is described as physically nauseating. There's this pungent, acrid smell of old blood mixed with a dry, earthy miasma. Yet Jonathan's journal literally notes that the atmosphere feels like corruption had become itself corrupt. The evil here isn't just abstract, it is an active environmental hazard.
You can practically smell the rusted iron and decay just reading through the pages. So the men get inside and they locate the boxes of earth. And this is where Mina's data collation creates a terrifying math problem for them.
The worst kind of math problem.
But seriously. From Jonathan's research into the shipping manifests, the team knows exactly 50 boxes of Transylvanian earth were loaded onto the ghost ship that brought Dracula to England. But when they count the boxes in the Carfax chapel, they only find 29.
Which means 21 boxes are missing. And that represents a massive escalation in the threat level. Dracula hasn't just set up one base. He has already dispersed 21 safe havens throughout the sprawling metropolis of London.
He has totally decentralized his network.
He really has.
But before they can even process the logistics of finding those missing boxes, the estate's automated defenses kind of kick in.
Right, the rats.
A massive swarm of rats just pours into the chapel, summoned by Dracula to overwhelm the intruders.
And this attack serves as the first live fire test of Van Helsing's briefing. The team knows Dracula exerts a supernatural influence over these animals. But Lord Godalming actually anticipated this and brought his terriers.
Which is such a great detail.
The moment the dogs are unleashed, they just viciously attack the swarm. And the rats, faced with actual physical predators, immediately break formation and scatter in complete terror.
Which proves that the spiritual control over beasts has absolute physical limits. I mean, a rat controlled by a vampire might seem terrifying, but at the end of the day, it is still just a rat. And a rat is terrified of a terrier.
Basic biology wins.
Exactly. The team effectively neutralizes a supernatural attack using basic biology. But, and we need to back up for a second here, because the raid on Carfax highlights a glaring, incredibly frustrating decision made by the group.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Just before they breach the chapel, the men actively choose to leave Mina behind at the asylum. They literally decide to exclude her from the operational phase of the mission to, quote-unquote, protect her.
Yeah, the conflict between Victorian chivalry and effective teamwork is a major thematic undercurrent in these chapters. Van Helsing, Seward, Carker, all of them. They bond over this shared sense of masculine duty, courage, and faith.
Right.
They convince themselves that they're doing the noble thing by shielding Mina from the physical horrors of the hunt.
But they sideline the very person who built their intelligence network. The analyst who solved the puzzle is told to just stay in her room and rest while the men go do the real work.
It is incredibly patronizing.
It's patronizing, but more importantly, it is a catastrophic strategic error. Because as we established earlier, Dracula's entire methodology relies on isolating his victims. By keeping Mina in the dark regarding their findings and their plans, the men are intentionally recreating the exact conditions the vampire needs to strike.
The dramatic irony in the text here makes their decision just agonizing to read.
Mm-hmm.
While the men are out playing soldier, we are given access to Mina's private journal entries. And she starts recording this creeping, unnatural lethargy.
But so ominous.
She describes strange, vivid dreams about a thick white mist seeping into her room from under the door. She wakes up exhausted, inexplicably crying, with just a feeling of overwhelming dread.
And the audience has just been briefed on the rules. We know Dracula can turn into elemental mist. We know he targets isolated women. When Mina documents this strange fog and this profound exhaustion, any modern listener reading this immediately recognizes the symptoms of a vampire attack.
Without a doubt.
The character's protective secrecy is actively setting up a fatal flaw in their defenses.
And the men are completely blind to her deterioration because their attention is entirely consumed by the logistics crisis. They have 21 missing boxes scattered somewhere in London. At this point, the narrative fully commits to the urban police procedural.
It totally does. And Jonathan Harker really steps up to lead the investigation, utilizing his actual professional skills as a solicitor.
The transformation of Jonathan Harker is one of the most satisfying elements of this section.
Oh, I completely agree. He starts the novel as this shivering, helpless prisoner in a medieval castle, suffering from severe PTSD.
Barely holding it together.
Yeah. But back in London, dealing with property laws and shipping invoices. He is in his element. He hits the streets, do some really aggressive shoe leather detective work. He tracks down the moving men who transported the boxes from Carfax.
And he traces the paper trail to a man named Joseph Smollett.
Right.
Smollett has this dog-eared notebook containing the exact delivery destinations. Jonathan uncovers that 6 boxes went to Mile End, 6 went to Bermondsey, and a newly discovered house in Piccadilly was purchased by a mysterious Count de Ville.
Jonathan effectively weaponizes bureaucracy against an immortal warlord. I mean, Dracula may possess the strength of 20 men and the ability to command the weather, but in the bureaucratic landscape of 19th century London, he still has to hire moving companies.
He has to sign property deeds, pay carters.
Exactly. Operating within the systems of the modern world leaves a paper trail, and a skilled legal investigator can follow that trail to dismantle the vampire's empire piece by piece.
But while Jonathan is out conducting interviews and tracking invoices across the city, there's a completely different tracking system operating right inside the asylum. We really need to look at Dr. Seward's patient, Renfield.
Oh, man. Renfield.
Yeah. Renfield serves as this dark mirror to the entire narrative. He is diagnosed with a zoophagous mania, which is essentially an obsession with consuming life.
And his behavior involves this grim, escalating food chain, right?
Yes. He catches flies, then he feeds those flies to spiders, then he feeds the spiders to birds. He truly believes that by consuming these creatures, he is absorbing their life force and extending his own existence.
Which is just a grotesque, small-scale imitation of what Dracula does to human beings.
Exactly. It's a direct parallel.
But what makes Renfield crucial to the plot right now is his incredibly erratic behavior. He swings violently between quiet, highly articulate lucidity and terrifying outbursts. Like, he attacks Dr. Seward with a knife and literally licks the blood off the floor, screaming, "The blood is the life."
That scene is so intense.
It is, and the timing of these outbursts is not random at all. Renfield acts like a corrupted compass needle or almost like a biological Geiger counter. His mania spikes and plummets entirely based on Dracula's physical proximity to the asylum.
The Geiger counter analogy perfectly captures his function. Renfield's psychological state is tethered to his lord and master. When Dracula is nearby, perhaps delivering those earth boxes to Carfax or just observing the asylum grounds, Renfield becomes haughty, violent, and filled with this manic sense of purpose.
He gets super arrogant.
Right. But when the vampire leaves to secure his other properties across London, Renfield's connection just wanes. He becomes desperate, rational, and he even begs Dr. Seward to release him from the asylum before something terrible happens.
He is a real-time tracking device providing live updates on the enemy's movements. If the team only understood how to read his signals, they would know exactly when the threat was standing right at their doorstep.
And his presence also underscores a massive vulnerability for the group. While Jonathan and Van Helsing are scouring the streets of London, focusing all of their energy outward, the monster has an inside man.
That's a scary thought.
It is. Renfield is a constant reminder that Dracula's operating right on the edges of their supposed safe haven. The vampire has a psychological foothold inside the very building where the men have left Mina.
The tension is just incredible when you look at the entire board. So let's pull all these threads together for you as we wrap up. Our deep dive into chapters 17 through 20 reveals a total narrative evolution. The story has completely moved past the isolated, paralyzing terror of the opening chapters.
Right. The characters have weaponized 1890s technology typewriters, phonographs, shorthand, to build an actionable database.
They have categorized the ancient enemy's powers and identified his critical logistical weakness regarding those boxes of earth.
They have fully transitioned from victims to hunters. By pooling their documentation and relying on modern bureaucratic systems, they've stripped away the vampire's greatest advantage, which was secrecy.
Yeah.
They have proven that applied knowledge, meticulous organization, and teamwork can effectively combat an ancient parasitic evil.
I think humanity is finally fighting back, and they're doing it with data. But the cost of this transition hangs really heavily over the narrative.
It does.
Because while the men are successfully tracking shipping invoices across London, we have to return to that catastrophic decision they made back at the asylum. They intentionally excluded their sharpest intelligence gatherer from the ongoing operation.
Yeah, they left Mina behind.
They took that woman who built their entire database and left her completely alone, unarmed, in a building where a zoophagous lunatic is eagerly awaiting his master's arrival. By cutting her off from the flow of information to shield her from the horror, have they unwittingly left the door wide open for the very monster they are trying to hunt down?
It's a huge mistake.
It really is. And it leaves you with a chilling question to explore on your own. Does keeping someone in the dark ever truly keep them safe? Keep organizing your data, watch out for sudden fogs, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
That's chapters 17 through 20. Mina turning scattered records into a shared case file, Jonathan's journal helping the group understand Dracula, and the hunt beginning with the search for the Count's boxes of earth. In the next episode, we'll cover chapters 21 through 23, where Renfield's role becomes tragic, Mina is attacked, and the group forces Dracula to flee from England. Thanks for listening to Chapter by Chapter Classics. If this episode helped you follow the story, follow the show in your podcast app so you don't miss the next chapter. And if you're enjoying this series, please take a moment to rate the podcast or leave a short review. It really helps other readers and students find the show.